Genshin Impact is an incredible game. I want to start off by saying that because as a World of Warcraft elitist veteran, as well as a Legend of Zelda superfan, and maybe even a bit of a gacha whale, I think that what miHoYo has brought together here in this magical development gumbo pot is one of the most magical experiences that I've ever had while playing video games. For better or worse, Genshin Impact has completely revolutionized the way that developers and audiences should think about mobile games, and has shown that there is a massive demand for live, single-player RPGs that can have recurring revenue streams. However, with that said, what miHoYo has made here is not perfect. Genshin Impact is a game with many flaws and, in my opinion, some pretty big game design missteps. Now, look, it's been over 7 years since I really wanted to make YouTube content, but after playing Genshin Impact since launch, there's just too much feedback and way too many suggestions that I have, and I'll never be able to fit it into all those little post-patch surveys that miHoYo pays me more to do. So instead, I want to create a show that analyzes some of Genshin Impact's game design faults. Something that will hopefully become a recurring series that will allow us to take a look at some of the frustrating game design elements that are inside Genshin Impact and see if maybe we can't suggest a few alternatives along the way. Without wasting any more time with this, let's be honest, really awkward intro, I want to jump in and talk about a gripe that I've had from the very first moment that I stepped inside of Teyvat and began to experiment with the elemental combat system. So let's sit down and talk about why I think the Pyro element absolutely sucks. Now, in order to better explain myself here, let's take a look at what the current design element of the Pyro element is. Pyro is easily one of the strongest elements in the entire game. Initially, this was because it was so heavily favored by the Spiral Abyss, as well as had floors that were entirely themed around Cryo. But beyond just the Spiral Abyss, because as we've seen now, those floors and themes kind of change over time, it also has one of the strongest reactions inside the game. There's Melt, which gives you a 2x multiplier on all of your damage, as well as Vaporize, which you'll do 1.5 times damage with a Pyro attack. Add to the fact that at game's launch, Diluc was easily one of the strongest carries in the entire game, and now the current bar is set by Hu Tao, another Pyro damage dealer. Also, you gotta add to the fact that people quickly discovered how powerful of a support that Bennett could be, and you're starting to completely stack the top tier ranks with Pyro characters. So then why do I think Pyro absolutely sucks? And it's entirely because of one element. Without the Pyro element, Dendro shields literally become the hardest barrier in the game to break, as well as it's almost a requirement to always be running with a Pyro character in your party at all times. Let's take a look at a couple different scenarios so that I can further explain why this oversight is such a design issue. First, you've got Pyro shields, which are super weak against Hydro. They're vulnerable against Electro through overloaded reactions, as well as they're vulnerable to Cryo through the Melt reaction. Cryo shields, basically the same thing, but in reverse. They're super weak against Pyro, they're vulnerable to Electro because of Superconduct, as well as they're strong against Hydro shields, so a little bit of strength and weakness there. Hydro shields, kind of same thing, they're super weak against Electro. I've actually found that you can use Cryo and be actually even more effective than using Electro against them, and they're strong against Pyro, balanced rock, paper, scissors. Electro shields, super weak against Cryo and vulnerable to Pyro. Geo shields, now this is where you could maybe make an argument that they haven't fleshed out a lot of different reaction-based weaknesses to the Geo element, because Geo shields are only weak against the Geo element, but they've also added in the fact that they are weak to Claymores. They're weak against the overloaded elemental reaction, which if you have the right character combination, you don't even need a Claymore, you can just trigger overloaded. They're even weak to plunging attacks. You can completely obliterate a Geo shield with a character like Xiao. If you guys want to see why I consider Xiao to be both an Anemo as well as Geo damage carry, then check out this video where I go into more detail about it. And then finally, we have Dendro shields, which are weak to Pyro. And that seems to be it. The only caveat that I've been able to sort of discover in some situations is that you can completely circumvent the shield by using a combination of Hydro and Cryo characters that allow you to potentially freeze the enemy and get behind them. But this really only works for about 1 to 2 hits before they unfreeze and become unhittable again. It's just really obnoxious. And so that, right there, that is my issue. That is why I think that the Pyro element absolutely sucks, because beyond these 2 things, there is nothing you can do to circumvent any character that's utilizing a Dendro shield. Every single other reaction in the game is designed to have multiple solutions that can be solved in multiple different ways, which allow the player to have the freedom to pick and choose and play their favorite waifus or husbandos. But when the game is capable of throwing a wrench in the entire design philosophy by throwing an enemy at you that can only be solved by one single element, you've now forced a Pyro damage dealer to be in their party at all times. And I just think that sucks, because so many other elemental skills in this game are designed with multiple solutions to them. And that design philosophy leaves you completely free to pick and choose and play the characters that you want to play, or even in a gacha game, the characters that you actually have access to. But with Dendro, it absolutely requires Pyro, and that's it. And that sucks. So I know I said at the start of the video that I wanted to try and present alternative design solutions at the end of these videos, but if I'm being honest, I'm not really sure what can be done in the current state of the game. I understand where the logic comes that why a wooden element is really only weak to being set on fire, and I'm not really sure that you could make Dendro weak to any of the other existing elemental reactions that would make a bunch of logical sense. Cryo doesn't make sense, Electro doesn't make sense. I mean, I guess when you think about it, when lightning strikes a tree, it explodes.
Speed of light.
So why is Electro not able to do the same? Never mind, that goes off on a tangent. I do understand why the design circle is the way that it is, and I understand why Superconductor or Electro doesn't necessarily fit into that, because they want to keep it all sort of contained over with these main elements. But you've got Dendro sitting over here by itself with only one weakness, and it just doesn't make sense to me. So for now, the best solution that I can offer is to maybe build some sort of weakness as they roll out new characters that utilize the Dendro element. But even honestly, that doesn't make a lot of sense, because if you think about it, Pyro is ineffective against Pyro, Cryo ineffective against Cryo, etc., etc. Maybe they could build something in with the Geo or Crystallize element, since that's on its own side of the chart, like the Dendro reaction and like the Animo Swirl reaction. Or maybe that they could make Dendro weak to other specific weapon types like Geo is to Claymores. I think that would also present a solution. I don't really have a perfect solution for this one, but as the game moves forward and more characters as well as more enemies are going to be utilizing the Dendro element and most likely having some sort of shield that we have to deal with, we're going to need to figure out some kind of solution that is not just always have a Pyro character in your party at all times. So there it is, my very first Genshin Gripe video. Let me know down in the comments below if you guys agree with me. Did I convince you that the Pyro element absolutely sucks, or is there something already in the game that I've completely overlooked that you guys are gonna let me know as soon as I upload this video? Either way, while you guys are down there, if you could, please tap that like and subscribe button. It really helps support this channel and helps me grow and spread the word to a much wider audience. This type of content takes a lot of time and energy, so knowing that you guys like this and want to see more of it will help me sort of understand that the time spent making it was worth doing more of. If live streaming is more your thing, I'm live over on Twitch every single Wednesday and Friday at 8:30 p.m. Pacific, and be sure to follow me over on Twitter for all of the latest channel updates. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.